Hello everyone, and welcome to my presentation entitled Whey, the Ultimate Immune Supportive Protein. My name is Nelson Narciso. I am the brand director for North Coast Naturals, a Canadian family-owned business owned and operated out of Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. My background is in holistic nutrition. I've studied Reiki, botanical medicine, and auricular medicine. I've been in this field now for over 30 years, lecturing across North America, as well as being involved in product development over those years. What we're here to talk about, as if the title wasn't suggestive enough, whey protein and how it impacts immunity. And all too often, many retailers and consumers don't recognize that whey has some enormous benefits that extend well outside of it just being a protein, as well as benefits outside of the sports nutrition realm, which is typically where, in the past anyway, whey seemed to really be recognized as having some benefit. But we now know whey has some benefits that extend well beyond those sort of more traditional applications of whey protein. Now, we know and have known for many years that there are specific nutrients that support immunity. We know these nutrients actually have a really important role to play with reducing the risk of infection, and we know that all too often many individuals don't get optimal amounts of those nutrients through diet alone. There are, for example, specific vitamins and minerals that have been extensively studied that we know directly influence our immune system. Vitamins like A, B6, B12, C, D, E, and folate. Minerals like zinc, iron, selenium, magnesium, and copper. And healthy fats, EPA and DHA. What's interesting is all too often people don't think of protein in the context of immunity. And I just mean right now protein in general, not a specific type of protein. We know that for healthy immune function, protein is critical. We know that a protein deficiency has been shown routinely to impact the immune system negatively and increase one's risk of infection. And the reason why protein is, in a general context, so important to immunity is that the production of immune cells as well as immune signaling chemicals require protein, require the amino acids that, of course, make up the proteins. Cells like lymphocytes and phagocytes and immunoglobulins and immune signaling chemicals like cytokines all require these amino acids. So let's now look at a specific type of protein, in this case, whey. So what is whey protein? Well, most of us think of whey and we think of a powder. Of course, whey doesn't begin its life as a powder. It begins its life as a cheese. I mean, when you make cheese, there is a natural separation between the cheese, which is called the curd, and the liquid, which is actually called the whey. They separate. And we all recall that nursery rhyme, Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet eating her curds and whey. Well, the curd is the cheese and the whey is that liquid that once again separates. And notice how she said eating both her curd, the cheese, and the whey. As you'll see as we go into the tradition and history of whey, whey has been consumed for a very long time by many, many cultures. Whey is not your typical dairy, and it's important to emphasize this because a lot of people think, well, cheese is made from milk and whey is made from cheese, therefore milk and whey must be one and the same, and that's in fact not the case at all. If you look at the composition of milk and you remove the water from the equation, what you're left with is 37% lactose, 30% fat, 6% minerals, and 27% protein. Of the protein in cow's milk, 80% is casein, 20% is whey. So what's important to emphasize here is that whey makes up a very small fraction of milk as a whole. To suggest they're one and the same is in fact not accurate. But it's also important to note that of the two proteins, casein and whey, casein is significantly more allergenic than whey. In fact, whey on an allergenicity scale ranks fairly low relative to some of the more commonly consumed proteins that people often use. We also need to recognize when you talk about people having issues or challenges with dairy, they're talking about two things. They typically talk about the allergenicity, which of course we've discussed in the context of casein, and they're talking about lactose. Well, whey is quite low in lactose, certainly much lower in lactose than you would say would be milk as a whole. In fact, the lactose content in a whey concentrate tends to be around 3 to 5% relative to milk. So once again, we need to understand that milk and whey are not one and the same, and that's an important thing to emphasize. When you look at whey protein powders, there are three options. You've got concentrates, isolates, and hydrolysates. Different methods of processing and filtering those liquids ultimately turn it into a powder, and one of these three powders. With whey protein concentrates, you get roughly about 80% protein per serving. You have some lactose, some fat, some cholesterol, and more than you get in a whey protein isolate, which by contrast has about 90% protein, lower cholesterol, lower fat, and lower lactose, in fact, considerably lower, in the order of between, say, 0.1 to 0.3% lactose in isolate. And we know it's maybe slightly more rapidly absorbed. It would be ever so slight, in part because of the lower fat content, which of course fat delays something called gastric emptying. And then we have whey protein hydrolysates. And whey protein hydrolysates are simply a protein that are broken down into peptides, into smaller chains. And a protein is defined as a chain of amino acids, 51 lengths or 51 amino acids connected or longer. If you have less than 51 amino acids connected together, it's defined as a peptide. So people often refer to whey protein hydrolysates as pre-digested proteins. The benefit there, they're very rapidly absorbed. They are also less allergenic. They're commonly used in infant formulas because of that. So each of these proteins have their own, if you will, strengths and weaknesses. If you're going to use a whey protein with the intent of having it provide therapeutic benefits and in particular immune supportive benefits, you want to make sure that you have whey concentrates. Or if it's a blended protein, a blend of whey concentrate, isolate, and hydrolysate, you want to make sure that concentrates are the dominant form of protein in that blend. And the reason for that is that whey concentrates provide bioactive peptides, lactoferrin, immunoglobulins, glycomacropeptides, and lactoperoxidase. And hundreds of studies have shown that these peptides have remarkable immune modulating and broad spectrum antimicrobial activity. For those that don't know the word immune modulation, what we're talking about is supporting the immune system by balancing it out. For example, if someone has a hyperactive immune system, an autoimmune disease, and they are looking to use something to support their immune system, what you don't want to do is stimulate an already overly active immune system. You want to modulate, you want to balance or regulate, and whey has those benefits. So these bioactive peptides are found in high concentrations in a whey concentrate, but are found in much lower ones, or often not at all, in whey isolates. We'll get into that in the next slide. Whey concentrates not only preserve these immune-enhancing peptides, but they are also a richer supply of minerals relative to isolates and hydrolysates. Now, when you use a whey isolate exclusively, that method of filtration that turns that, once again, that liquid whey into a whey isolate ultimately, that method of filtration, or methods, because there's more than one, can either lower or eliminate altogether these peptides. If you use something called ion exchange, it eliminates them. If you use another method of filtration called cross-flow microfiltration, often just simply called CFM whey, that type of filtration lowers them but doesn't eliminate those peptides altogether. But once again, why would you even want an isolate knowing this? Well, simply put, isolates once again provide more protein, lower fat, lower carbs, and lower lactose. So it is desirable from that perspective, but recognizing that it will be lower in those peptides, or worst case scenario, have none of them if it's filtered using ion exchange technology. So when choosing a whey protein, you want to make sure that if it's especially a blend, and I'm a big fan of blended proteins, that you have one that is dominated by whey concentrate. You want that to be the major source of protein, with some isolate and even some hydrolysate, because now you get the best of all worlds. You get the therapeutic activity of the concentrates, the lower fat, carbs, lactose, and higher percentage protein of an isolate, alongside the lower allergenicity and the more rapid absorption of a hydrolysate. But once again, and sort of reinforcing this point, maybe ad nauseum, if you want the therapeutic benefits, you need some whey concentrates. And the reason why I'm reinforcing this as much as I am is that by and large, out there, people have this belief that whey isolates are vastly superior. And although they're superior in some regards, from a therapeutic perspective, they most certainly are not. Now, there's some other noteworthy compounds found in whey. One of them is cysteine. It's the amino acid cysteine. And cysteine is essential for the production of glutathione. And glutathione is something we produce in our body from the amino acids cysteine, glutamic acid, and glycine. And that trio of aminos produces glutathione. And we know that we need glutathione because it's absolutely critical for immune function, detoxification, and it's been often coined the master antioxidant. Of those three amino acids, cysteine, glutamic acid, and glycine, the one that's typically harder to come by is in fact cysteine. So it's been called the limiting amino acid for that reason. It tends to be the one we don't get often enough of that drives that reaction, that production of glutathione. So whey is a great source of this amino acid. It also happens to be a very good source of glutamine. If you want the richest source of glycine that you can get out there, period, nothing comes close to collagen. Collagen has the highest glycine content of all of the proteins that we know of. We also happen to know that whey is extremely rich in branched chain amino acids. In fact, it's known to be the highest source of these aminos. And these amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, are highly anabolic and anti-catabolic. They are also important for energy. When you use up the stored energy in the muscle or in the cells called glycogen, your body will use some of those branched chain amino acids for energy, for fuel. Now, whey has a very long and impressive history. It was discovered some 3,000 years ago, and about 2,500 years ago, it was first recognized as having some medicinal properties. That's when we start seeing writings about whey in various texts. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, called liquid whey serum, and he was known to have said it strengthens constitutional immune resistance to disease and aids in the adaptive powers of the organism. We've all heard that saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. But in the 17th and 18th century, Italians had a saying about whey. If everyone were raised on whey, doctors would be bankrupt. They also had another saying, give whey to your friends and feed your enemies late at night. So, of course, the understanding there is this, and the suggestion is that whey imparts health benefits. And of course, if you're healthy, you're not going to visit your doctor's office as often. In the 1700s, whey houses opened up to serve whey beverages, and you could actually fortify these with botanicals for added health benefits. By the mid-19th century, when whey had reached its peak of popularity, there were over 400 of these whey houses throughout Western Europe. So what does the science have to say about whey? Does science support the historical evidence that we just talked about, that whey offers some medicinal benefits? Well, sure enough, when you look, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of studies exploring whey protein and the benefits it has to offer. And not only whey protein in general, but in specific, those unique bioactive peptides. So if you do a search on PubMed, and for those that don't know, PubMed is a website where they publish medical studies. And if you do a search there, you'll find, once again, just an abundance of research showing whey has remarkable health benefits. I looked here at a few examples and did a search under whey protein in health and found 365 human studies. I looked at whey protein and immune. I could have done immunity or immune function. I chose immune. 87 human studies. And I should mention, I looked over a 20-year window. Whey protein in cancer, 45 human studies. And then whey protein in exercise, and as you'd expect, because there's so much in the way of research looking at whey and exercise performance, there were 287 human studies. So there's really just a wealth of research out there for individuals to look at if they want to do a deeper dive and explore the many therapeutic properties that whey protein has to offer. To just simply summarize some of those benefits, we know that whey is immune modulating. We know it's antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal against a whole range of microbes. These are pathogenic microbes. I've only listed a few of them. There are many more that have been looked at in studies. It has the ability to, it appears, lower risk of cancer, as well as be supportive for those that undergo chemo and radiotherapy For those who work with patients who have cancer, who have clients who have cancer, who have loved ones that have cancer, certainly worth exploring further. Just go on to PubMed. There have been a lot of great articles written by physicians on the use of whey for helping individuals with cancer. Sarcopenia, the loss of muscle with age. We know that whey protein, in large part because it is a rich source of the amino acid leucine, leucine drives something called mTOR signaling, which is what we use to produce more muscle. So it triggers the production of muscle or synthesis of muscle. And of course, if you do that, as you age, it slows the loss of muscle. So for those that are sarcopenic, it would be really advantageous for them to consider using whey. Whey also offers some cardiovascular benefits. It lowers cholesterol, which is interesting because whey does contain some cholesterol. However, every study that I've come across to date suggests that whey in fact lowers cholesterol, and in particular may lower the LDL, the low density lipoprotein, the so-called bad cholesterol, and raise the good HDL or high density lipoprotein cholesterol. Whey also has some antihypertensive benefits, and that is to say it can lower high blood pressure. For those looking to prevent or that actually have osteoporosis, whey is a rich source of dietary calcium. You get 200 milligrams of elemental calcium for every 40-gram serving of whey. We also know that whey can increase osteoblast activity while decreasing osteoclast activity. In the world of bone, there's something called bone remodeling, where you're building and breaking down bone. And the osteoblasts build the bone. In very general terms, the osteoclasts break it down. So from a bone building, bone breaking down, remodeling process, whey can be also beneficial. And for cystic fibrosis, this is something that is very dear and very close to me personally. My 8-year-old son has cystic fibrosis. It is a genetic disease. And we've always worked diligently through diet, supplementation, the various treatments, to obviously do whatever we can to maintain our son's health. And this study I came across a number of years ago where they used whey protein. In this case, 10 grams of it was given to CF patients a day. And what they found was that there was almost a 50% increase in glutathione levels in white blood cells. The reason why that was really relevant is that typically in the cystic fibrosis population, glutathione levels are much lower than they are in the non-CF population. So being able to raise glutathione levels is something that is highly valuable and sought after clinically. So given the enormous health benefits that whey protein has to offer in general, and once again the immune benefits in specific, we decided at North Coast Naturals, if you're going to be using a whey protein to begin with, why not give it an added immune boost? Especially relevant during these times. Why not fortify whey with some known and studied compounds that actually can further support immunity? And that was the impetus behind our new product, which we're launching officially at the CHFA. This new product is called Boosted Immuno Whey Plus. It is, to the best of our knowledge, the first immune-fortified whey protein. It is entirely grass-fed, and it is fortified with key immune-supportive compounds. So naturally, we started with whey, and we decided to go with a whey blend, and I already discussed the rationale behind that, but just to review it again, although concentrates do provide more of those bioactive compounds, the isolate and hydrolysate have some benefits to offer as well, so we wanted to combine the best of all worlds. We do have more, considerably more. The highest percentage of the trio is a whey concentrate, and our whey isolate is a cross-flow microfiltered isolate, which I mentioned earlier is the one that does preserve some of those therapeutic bioactive compounds. So we've combined the best of all three into this one formula. And of course, it's naturally rich in, once again, those peptides. In fact, if you look at the label, you'll see this exact chart here, this exact table, where we've broken down the amount. Now, people might ask, why a percentage and why a range versus a specific, say, milligram quantity? The answer simply being that, of course, this is something natural. And because it's natural, there's going to be some inherent variation. from cow to cow, from season to season, there's going to be some variation with respect to the amount of glycomacropeptide, immunoglobulins, etc. So if you ever see a very specific amount, that's just not realistic. You're not going to ever have a very precise amount of a specific compound. This is not something made in a lab. Once again, it is entirely natural. So you get that inherent fluctuation, which we highlight here in this table. One of the things I've been using for many years, that I've also been researching for many years, and that I'm a huge fan of, are, of course, mushrooms. Medicinal mushrooms offer some enormous benefits, and they've been well researched. We know certainly medicinal mushrooms have immune modulating, antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, anti-tumor, and antioxidant activity. There are compounds in mushrooms that have been shown to be very beneficial, and I'm not going to go through all of them, of course, but there's some beta-glucans, polysaccharide protein complexes, and so on that have been shown and been heavily researched and have been known to have, once again, these benefits, whether it's immune modulation or antioxidant or antibacterial activity. We've used 6 organic adaptogenic mushrooms. They are cordyceps, reishi, king trumpet, shiitake, lion's mane, and turkey tail. I could certainly do a much deeper dive looking at the unique benefits and compounds that are present in each of these individual mushrooms. That would take up far too much time. Suffice it to say that collectively, these are some of the most medicinal and therapeutic mushrooms that we know of that have some really remarkable immune-enhancing benefits. At some later point, I'm sure I will do a much deeper dive looking at some of the therapeutic activity that these mushrooms have to offer. We've also added vitamins and minerals that are recognized for their ability to support the immune system. We've added vitamin C, vitamin A in the form of beta-carotene, magnesium, and aquamin seaweed-derived minerals. Aquamin is a trademarked and well-researched form of red marine algae, which contains 74 both macro and trace minerals. It's undergone 39 peer-reviewed publications over the past 15 years. It's been shown to enhance gut health by restoring a balance to the immune response, and it even provides a probiotic effect. It's been shown to help balance the gut microbiota, which is really quite interesting because we don't often think about minerals in the context of having prebiotic activity. We've added prebiotics and probiotics, which we know support immunity and gastrointestinal health. And of course, the gut and immunity are interconnected. We know that about 80% of our immune system is regulated in the gut, so there's a strong interplay between the two. And we know that probiotics, of course, support the gut, so clearly we know that they support immunity, and that relationship has been well established. We've used a very interesting probiotic called Bacillus subtilis DE111. It's undergone a wealth of research, many human studies in specific, because you want some of these human studies, not just in vitro studies. What's really remarkable, aside from the research benefits of this probiotic, is the stability of this probiotic. When you combine a probiotic with a food, with a powder, probiotics are susceptible to heat and humidity, and there are a lot of things that we know can kill these probiotics. But what you want is you want a probiotic to remain active in your product. And this has been shown to be remarkably stable. It's a bacilli, which is a spore former, and these spores are resilient to acid, to bile, to heat, and rather remarkable temperatures at that. So very resilient, and really one of the preferred probiotics that you want to use in a food-based supplement. So we've got the probiotic Bacillus subtilis DE111 alongside the prebiotics inulin, as well as whey. Now, whey you might not be thinking of as a prebiotic, but it is. In fact, whey has lactoferrin and glycomacropeptides and has been well shown to have some prebiotic activity that is really quite noteworthy. And of course, I mentioned this in the previous slide, even the aquamin has some prebiotic activity as well. So we're giving you the probiotic and once again the food that the probiotics feed on, which is of course known as prebiotics. We have immune supportive superfoods, turmeric, which are known to have, although anti-inflammatory benefits are probably the most well-recognized benefit of turmeric. It's also well known for its antimicrobial, immune modulating, and neurological benefits. Curcuminoids are the most researched active compound in turmeric. And then we have Pansen ginseng, which people often think of ginseng, they think of energy, they think of something that's adaptogenic, both of which are true, yet people often don't recognize that Panax ginseng has well-documented antimicrobial and immune modulating activity as well. The ginsenosides in the Panax ginseng are the ones typically that have undergone the greatest amount of research. We have tart cherry. Tart cherries are known for being rich in antioxidants, having anti-inflammatory, antihypertensive benefits, as well as helping with sleep, in part because cherries are actually a rich source of melatonin. Having a few handfuls of cherries before bedtime might not be a bad idea if you want a little bit of melatonin. And it's also useful for DOMS. DOMS stands for, it's an acronym for delayed onset muscle soreness, that muscle soreness that people experience after they work out, usually within a day or two post-workout. So the tart cherry is in there as well for added benefit. And then we have cinnamon, and cinnamon has a number of benefits. We know it's good for balancing blood sugar. We know it's antimicrobial. We know in particular it has some remarkable antiviral activity. And we know it has powerful antioxidant activity as well. In fact, this is largely true for many of the spices, whether it be rosemary, oregano, clove, thyme. All of these things have remarkable antioxidant and antimicrobial activity that is really quite noteworthy. Then we have spirulina, and spirulina is a nutrient-rich blue-green algae. And people often think of it in the context of it's a great source of chlorophyll, which is certainly true, that and chlorella, and they think of it as being a great source of nutrients, also true. But what people don't often think about, or even frankly know about, is does spirulina have any immune supportive benefits? And it'll be surprising for many if they decide to do a deeper dive into spirulina to find there's a lot of research looking at spirulina as it relates to immunity. We know it can increase the production of antibodies and white blood cells. It's been shown to have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and even anti-anemic benefits. I always tell clients, you know, if you have anemia, by all means take your iron, your vitamin C and certain B vitamins, but also complement that with some chlorophyll and some spirulina because of its anti-anemic benefits. A little side note that just occurred to me as well, worth mentioning. Lactoferrin has been shown to also be beneficial for those that are anemic. It's something that one could also consider using as an additional thing to help support their iron status or iron levels. We also know spirulina, and this is an interesting study that looked at, and it's one of several that have looked at spirulina's antimicrobial activity, in this case specifically its antiviral activity. And it was found to be able to reduce the ability for certain viruses to replicate. And you can see them all there, from herpes simplex to influenza, measles, and so on. So some really remarkable and lesser known benefits of using spirulina. We've added enzymes for enhanced digestion and absorption, protease to help break down the protein or better digest the protein, lactase for the residual lactose. Whey concentrates have about 3 to 5% lactose, whey isolates between 0.1 to 0.5%. So if you ever hear someone say a whey isolate is free of lactose, that's not true. There's always some lactose, albeit very low trace amounts. There's always some in there. From a labeling perspective, there are certain regulations that allow you, if you're below a certain percentage, to say lactose free. But technically speaking, there's always going to be, albeit very small amounts, there's going to be always some there. So to sum it all up, Boosted Immunowhey Plus provides a perfect balance. A quality protein on the one hand, with the immune support we all want and need, especially during these times. You get 20 grams of grass-fed whey protein. It's important to reinforce this is grass-fed. 12.9 grams of essential amino acids, branched-chain aminos, and glutamine. You get the immune-boosting ingredients. You have a probiotic, vitamins A and C, minerals, magnesium, and the aquamin red marine algae. You have 6 organic adaptogenic mushrooms, turmeric, spirulina, and cinnamon. It's enzyme fortified for improved digestion and absorption. It's naturally flavored. You've got chocolate or vanilla, and it's sweetened with stevia. It tastes fantastic, and don't take it from me. You know, I've given it to my children. I've given it to people who I know to be very picky, who typically are not very fond of various protein powders. They've all loved it. There is no mushroom flavor at all. People might be concerned because of some of the mushrooms in here that the earthy notes will come through. They do not. It tastes great. And as we all know, when working with individuals, when working with customers, you know, the challenge is that people often, as much as they may like the formula and the health benefits it has to offer, if it doesn't taste good and if it doesn't mix well, this mixes, by the way, beautifully, they're going to be non-compliant. They're not going to want to use it day in, day out. They're going to want to use this because it really does taste absolutely magnificent. It's available in an 840 gram size, as well as some single serves for individuals to try and sample. So I hope you found this presentation informative. I hope you learned something about whey that you didn't know previously. And hopefully you are now going to have sort of a renewed interest in not only whey protein in general, but may be interested in using a product like Boosted Immuno Whey Plus. Thank you very much for your time, and once again, stay healthy and stay well.